Hey everybody, welcome back to another news roundup. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Excuse me if you hear some noises in the background. It's just one of those days. It's just a very, very noisy day here in the neighborhood. In my house, my brother is playing guitar in the background. So yeah, hope you guys are having a good day. Obviously, as I've illustrated in the last video, there were some new additions to the family that have come about. A new kitten, Milo, who is currently sleeping or bathing himself up here next to me by the window in his little bed. But yeah, things are just kind of being situated here, and thankfully the process has been very, very smooth. So everything's been going pretty well. But we have another news roundup for this week. Hopefully, again, we will try to get some new content up. It's just been a very busy few weeks. So hopefully we'll get some content out. But for the time being, we have another news roundup for this week. So let's just dive right on in. So one of the big stories for this week is revolving around the James Bond series. Now, this kind of came about last week, but there were some other portions that came along with the story that happened this week. So we'll just talk about it all here since I didn't cover it last week. So for those who don't know, the James Bond series has ownership, film rights wise under MGM, and MGM was just bought out by Amazon Studios, and Amazon and the producers of the series, Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, they were having some conflict of interest in terms of how to deal with the series moving forward, and hence why we haven't seen a new James Bond film yet. And well, there seems to have been some pretty big changes in terms of the ownership of the James Bond series now, because according to some reports, there's been a new joint agreement made between the James Bond producers and Amazon Studios, which sees Amazon Studios gaining creative control over the series, granting them now complete and utter control over the entire series. So before, Amazon Studios held up the ownership of the license, aka they're the financiers of the movies, whereas the producers held the creative control over the series. So they were the storytellers of said movies. Now, in this new deal, the producers will still remain in some frame of ownership. There's now co-owners, but they've now relinquished their creative control. So they basically have become that of like a George Lucas. You know, they are going to make profit, but they are not going to be at the helm of a lot of this stuff. So now, according to sources familiar with the new ownership, the next steps in Amazon's newfound ownership is to move forward with another feature. Now they're making it a top priority. They're currently searching for a producer, and that's what they're looking to do there. So now we have gotten some details about the whole debacle that happened between Amazon and the producers. Some of the details that entailed within the previous line of ownership, within creative control. So apparently the Broccoli family, the veteran producers, when they held creative control over the series, they were actually very adamant and very strict on how to handle the series and their relationships with the filmmakers. So this would involve actually prohibiting final cut privileges to be given to the filmmakers, maintaining final approvals of the film itself. That's where allegedly Christopher Nolan was stepped away, because there's been some reports that suggest that Christopher Nolan wanted to develop a James Bond film, but he walked away after being informed of not having a say really in the final cut of the film. So now we don't know any details regarding the new James Bond film, what that may or may not entail, who's going to be starring it, who's going to be directing it, if someone like a Nolan would even come back for James Bond. We don't know, but at least back then it seems Nolan was interested, but then it just never materialized because of those restrictions. But yes, so we have a new owner. brand new owner, full new owner now, because Amazon was just the financiers, but now they have the bread and butter for the James Bond series. So from how I take this, they, it goes without saying, like, they couldn't come to an agreement, the producers and the studio, and ultimately the studio just stepped in and bought them out, essentially. If we can't agree on something, then we just need you guys to step down. That's what it seems to me is what was going on. And as I've said previously, when we talked about this debacle with James Bond, while the producers may have a better frame of mind in tackling the story, this is ultimately the studio's movie. I mean, Amazon owns MGM, and they own the license, so the producers may hold creative control. They do not hold authority when it comes to business decisions. They just don't. They hold a artistic decision, but not a business decision. And those are two very, very different things. But as far as what the discussions were, I mean, the producers weren't going to win out in this case compared to a mega corporation like Amazon. So, it was a losing battle regardless. Like, they own the license and they have the money, and they're the ones planning to invest into it, meaning they have the deeper pockets. So it's in their right to exercise their authority if they believe it will be better for their business. And that's the call they made. So we'll see in the future if that was the right call to make, at least on an artistic level. I mean, financially, it just makes sense, because if they're not doing anything with the series, I mean, literally when you actually see what has transpired with James Bond after the last film, which was No Time to Die, which was back in 2021, they haven't done anything. One reality show that they were able to cook up, but that's really it. And I believe that the only reason why that's out there is because they had to do something with the license. Because people forget, ownership of licenses have an expiration date. So if you don't do anything with an IP or a license, you have to sell off those rights. So that's why Amazon was probably pressuring these producers to start working on something, because they only have so much time. Let me check when Amazon bought MGM. MGM. When did they buy MGM? Amazon buys MGM. They back in March of 2022. So yeah, dude. So they have had the company, or they've at least had they've had the film rights for about 2 years now, or at least the license in their possession for 2 years, and they've not done anything with it outside of a reality show. So they need to do something with it, or else they're going to have to sell off the film rights. So that's the business side of things. So that's why the studio did what they did, because if the producers are not going to do anything with it, then they have to step in and they have to do something with it themselves. So we'll see how it transpires. It seems like we're probably going to end up having the next James Bond probably by 2027. It's probably what it sounds like. Or maybe late 2026. We'll see. But yeah, a James Bond film is on the way. It is finally moving forward, thanks to Amazon's pressures and to them just basically buying out the producers. So there you have that. Speaking of projects, Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese, of course, you guys know, one of the most well-known filmmakers out there. For some people, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. I really love him. I don't know if I put him on my Mount Rushmore of filmmakers, but he's definitely, obviously, a spectacular filmmaker. He has unveiled another project. This is a pitch that originated from Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. And according to Deadline, the pitch has been delivered to Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese, who could become involved in respective roles as, actor and director. Now, the idea is a mafia-based drama set in Hawaii that centralizes on an aspiring crime boss battling other criminal organizations to seize control of the rest of the underground in this specific region. Now, this idea would be written by Nick Bilton, whose previous work includes a documentary entitled Fake Famous, which I'm not really familiar with. And yeah, so the idea is being shopped around right now to various producers. I heard that Netflix may or may not be interested, which is interesting given their relationship to Scorsese and how The Irishman performed. It really didn't do all that great. But this idea makes it now 4 projects that Scorsese has announced, or at least has put out there that he's working on. And yeah, so the 4 now is this. Another one is a Frank Sinatra biopic, a Jesus film, and then an adaptation of a novel entitled The Devil in the White City. 2 of these ideas, mind you, planning on starring Leonardo DiCaprio. So, yeah. So, given the talent that's potentially becoming involved and knowing how Scorsese likes to operate nowadays, I can pretty much confirm that this is going to be another juggernaut of an investment, probably sitting in the near $200-300 million range. And perhaps these ambitions are the reasons why none of these projects have gotten off the ground. That's just my guess. I know he was saying that the Jesus project, he was wanting to do that a little more small scale, which is probably the one you should push for more, I'm just saying. But I know the public reason is that he's being selective as to what he wants to work on next, but it does make you wonder if he's getting pushback from the studios based on his own demands. And we know this because, a lot of his current dealings have been with streaming services and not with any of the big, mega, studio heads, Warner Brothers, Universal, all those guys. They're now in business with Scorsese at the moment. And the reason for that is because of just how much he's asking for his projects. And I think that that's just really not working in his favor. It really hasn't worked in his favor in the past few years. The Irishman wasn't a financial success. Killers of the Flower Moon was not a financial success. So maybe, just maybe, don't ask for so much money when you don't make as much money. Maybe then you'll see a willingness to invest from these companies. But yeah, he's got projects in the works. We don't know if they're going to happen or not because of just how he is, but we'll see. We'll see how things shape out. I mean, one of these projects will come to pass. I mean, it's just a matter of just who's going to bend over, So we'll see. I've heard Netflix might be thinking, but I think that would be a bad move. I honestly, if it were me, if I were any of these studios, I would just say no. I just, the ambitions, the sort of investments that would be made with Scorsese, currently speaking, it's just not worth it. It's really not. If it's not a notable IP, then why would I invest $200-300 million into basically an original idea? No, that's not financially stable or financially sound. So, but eventually one of these companies will bend over because Scorsese's name still has value within this business, or at least in the industry, that is. So, speaking of industry names, let's get into probably the big story of this week, which is revolving around Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy is reportedly set to retire from her position as president of Lucasfilm by the end of this year. Now, some other reports have suggested that her retirement isn't an illustration of her walking away from Disney entirely. It's just moving in a different direction within the company. Now, there has been some other reports that have come out disputing the claim, saying that it's not true, it's not completely with merit, but there's enough people out there discussing it and reporting on it enough to say that appears to be the case. And if you understand, just the broader scopes of just this decision. This does not sound like, because the public reason, those, as I say, that is that Kathleen Kennedy is just wanting to move in a different direction. But we all know what the real reason is. This is basically in relation the Democratic Party expressing their concern to Joe Biden when he was looking to run in this past election, which is simply this: you're not doing good and you're not going to win, and we need you to step aside. That sentiment is essentially what Disney has advised her to do. They're advising her to step down. They're not firing her, but they're basically advising her to step down. And looking at her track record, you can understand why. Because excluding the performances of the past trilogy with Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, all of which would go on to make billions of dollars, Star Wars has just been in a downhill spiral. I mean, it really has. I mean, there's been no new films, no really eye-catching television programs, really just low performing, a lack of innovation within the brand, no real progression, really. It's been infested with just fatigue and repetition for a lot of people. And it's really time for a change. And Disney is ultimately saying the exact same thing. So this to me is just a mutual relinquishment. It's just them basically saying, hey, we need you to do this because we see this company needs to reform and you're just not working. We need you to step aside. And that's basically what's happening here. So, I think it's Bob Iger ultimately coming in and telling Kennedy that this is not working out for us anymore and we need you to step aside. And, this would not be the first of those types of times when Disney decided to make changes in leadership because of someone not working. Obviously, it's regular practice in every business, but publicly speaking, remember, we're talking Bob Iger specifically. Remember Bob Chapek. Remember he ran Disney at one point. And nobody liked Chapek's methods because he has political affiliations and amongst other reasons. And that's why they ultimately brought Bob Iger back. So it's not the first time that Disney has made real big, changes within their leadership because of a lot of the, for Bob Chapek, it was more political motivations that got him to step aside. People, politically speaking, were not happy about him. In this case, this is a financial reason. There's just, Star Wars has not proven in the past. God, when Rise of Skywalker came out 2019, so it's 2025, so 6 years now. We have yet to see Star Wars really evolve, and that falls to leadership, that falls into management, and like I said, name a movie outside of The Mandalorian that's set to come out. They're, like, in terms of having a solid release, that there isn't any, and that's a fault to the business models and the just the strategy that's in place. And Kennedy is absolutely involved in all that. So you can understand why she's retiring. It's not to do with her decision. I mean, it's partially her decision, but it's more or less Disney probably telling her that you need to step down and we need to make some changes. So, and it's for the best. Just seeing how the brand has been for the past 6 years, it definitely needs to change. And new leadership, new visions need to be taken, new paths need to be taken. And this just seems like the best thing that Disney could have done for the company. So, alrighty, we got some new stuff regarding the whole Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuit. I don't have all of my notes, so I'm just kind of going off the cuff here because I was kind of combing through some information that came out. So there was 2 new things that we learned about the whole, debacle between the two, them dealing with court and legal stuff. And one of those things we learned, which I believe we talked about last week, was in regards to Blake Lively looking to gain phone records from Baldoni's team. And I guess there was some pushback from Baldoni's team, mainly due to the fact that Lively was wanting to obtain records from many, many years ago so not within the time of when production was taking place for the film It Ends With Us. She was looking to do, more from his past. And the court ruled that that was not advisable, that they didn't want that to happen. And makes sense. I mean, she doesn't have a lot of reason to do so because of her just laying out her case. She just doesn't have much of a reason to seek that information. So, but they didn't say that she couldn't seek phone records. It's just that she can't seek phone records that are like that old and have little to do with the case, So, so there was that. And then we just learned, I believe today, if I look it up right here, because I just saw it, we learned that also that they were, I know I have it here somewhere. Hang on. Maybe it's older than I thought. Hang on. Oh yes, here we go. Yeah, it just blanked on me. Sorry. We also learned that the New York Times, who were the people who published Blake Lively's accusations and made it public about all of her allegations, they apparently want to step away from the lawsuit because they were named in the lawsuit. They were literally involved with the unveiling of her case, and they just decided to step away. So Blake Lively apparently is cool with it. And I mean, I guess I don't understand, why she wouldn't. I mean, that's like, you should be cool with that. I mean, I don't know, but again, it just illustrates once again that Blake Lively's team and Blake Lively herself are lacking any real grounds to their case outside of just saying that, hey, we have two actresses that will vouch for us in the trial. They'll testify. Oh, what are their names? Oh, we won't say. We have these messages from Baldonia that paint him a certain way. Oh, show us those messages. Oh no, we won't show you those messages. We'll show you edited messages from the New York Times article, by the way. We'll have those out, right? And by the way, didn't the New York Times supposedly throw a journalist under the bus or something? Pointed them out or something. I thought I saw a YouTube video regarding one of the journalists who was named in the lawsuit or named within the New York Times article, and they were like, what? Why am I being mentioned here? And if you look into it, it's like, yeah, what the fuck? They didn't have to be named. But yeah, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, it's if you guys are so involved, it's to step away like that. What is that? That tells me that you guys are no longer confident in what you published. That's what it tells me anyway. And in the conversation regarding the phone records, again, I mean, if you're not willing to lay out your argument, I just came back to my thought. If you're not willing to lay out your argument, well, by discussing all these vague points, oh, we have two actresses, oh, we have messages, even the messages that the New York Times put out, those edited messages, again, that's out of context. Literally, that's out of context. When it says edited messages, that's out of context. So, and it's little pieces of messages. It's no, let's see the whole chat, So it's she doesn't have a lot of meat to her claims. And these phone records that she's trying to catch, my opinion of that is that she's probably looking for, because if you know about Baldoni, I guess Baldoni has had a pass with relationships and wasn't the greatest of partners. And he's been working on that since. I guess he's had podcasts now where he discusses toxic masculinity, amongst other things. And I guess Lively, if my opinion, is that she was trying to look for something in those older phone records that would exploit, the situation and not, make it to where it's relating to the case, So that's my opinion anyway. And I think the courts recognize that as well. And that's why they said, no, you're not going to access those phone records. You can access other phone records that were within the time of when you were working on this film, but you're not going to go into his private personal information. No, that's not what's happening here. So yeah, again, I honestly don't know why this trial is being pushed for a year. I honestly think you can do this in the summer and have it be done. I would honestly push it for like the summer just to get it over with, because because the more time you let this sit, you're also like letting her just like, thankfully this judge is acting reasonably, and fairly, not just siding with one person. But it's like, with so much time, it's like, it's like, just get it done. I'd rather just get this done, and because of just how blatant this whole thing is, there is no discrepancies. There is no need for further investigation. Or for these attorneys to like seek out more of this or more of that. We know what's up. We know Baldoni is basically fine. Did he maybe do something here and there? Perhaps. But he didn't do the extent of what Lively is discussing. He's not. He's not who she has painted him to be. And I just think that it's just, it's just so blatant. And I'd rather just have the trial over with at this point rather than just having to mull on it for a year. But we'll see what happens next year. Well, obviously we're gonna hear more stuff in the next coming weeks, for the next coming months, really. But we'll see what happens. I think it's pretty clear, especially if you've been keeping up with the whole story. It's pretty clear who is the innocent one here, and it's pretty it's gonna be interesting how they deal with Blake Lively once this trial is done. I'm very curious of how, Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, very curious how they're going to be dealt with in Hollywood once this is all done. Because I really don't think that they're going to come out squeaky clean. Really doubt it. So. Alrighty, we have one trailer to discuss for today, and then we're going to call it a day. So this trailer I want to discuss just because I found it fairly interesting. It's for a film called The Assessment. This is starring Elizabeth Olsen, Alicia Vikander, and Hemish Patel. Sorry if I butchered that name. Probably did. Directed by Fleur Fortune. It has an accent. Fortune, I think. In her feature debut. And this has a release date for March 21st, 2025. And I'm oddly intrigued. Even if I completely acknowledge that it doesn't appear to be as well-rounded. I kind of wish that, because it's basically a representation of the pressures of parenthood, or at least the early stages of parenthood. And, we've seen these sort of stories play out before, in just films like We Need to Talk About Kevin with Tilda Swinton, where we have, a baby or something to act as the baby to illustrate the pressures or the lack of interest within these parents, and their correlation to the functions of their roles as father and mother. And in this case, Alicia Vikander is quite literally just playing out scenarios of how this kid would be in certain situations and basically testing their willpower. And I think that could be interesting. I just wish that they heightened the metaphorical depictions, because I get that they're trying to make some kind of metaphorical idea within Alicia Vikander's performance, which definitely looks interesting. It's definitely a unique turn for the actress. But But I just think that they could have committed more in a subtle way, maybe not be so blunt as to what she is doing in that scenario. I would have like just gone a lot weirder with this shit. You know, like you can have the sci-fi elements, but ultimately, as to what Alicia Vikander represents in the story, I would have made that so mute. I would have made that be so vague, so as to having that performance be so much more chaotic in nature, and at the same time maybe be more interpretive in terms of how it relates to these two characters. I think that would have been more interesting, but I just think it just as it is, it just seems a bit heavy-handed for my liking. But oddly enough, I dig the vibe. I dig the environment being established. My issue just comes from the delivery of its narrative. So I may or may not seek it out. I don't know, because I do like what I saw. I just wish, though, it wasn't as knowing. More vagueness, I feel, would have helped. But I don't know. Knowing me, I probably won't seek it out. But it looks interesting. I just wish that it was less is more in this case. So, but yeah, those are my thoughts for this week, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Had some interesting topics for this week regarding Kathleen Kennedy. Of course, more stuff with the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni case, James Bond, and of course with Martin Scorsese's new film and this new trailer we talked about, The Assessment. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, like I told you, we're still in a period right now, just, changes with, having to deal with the baby and stuff. The baby has been great. He's been such a great addition to the family. And the transition process has been very, very smooth, thankfully. But hopefully we'll be back in the swing of things pretty soon. But let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.